Avoidants don't chase, but they break inside when you're gone. Let me rip the mask off this one, because nobody's telling you the truth about avoidance. They don't run because they don't care. They run because they care so much it terrifies them. Avoidants don't run because they don't care. They run because they care too much. That's the paradox no one ever tells you. On the surface, they look cold, distant, unbothered. You think they moved on like you were nothing more than a speed bump in their journey. But deep down, their silence is screaming. They vanish not because you meant nothing, but because you meant everything. And when something means everything to someone who's built their entire identity around emotional survival, that something becomes terrifying. Love becomes pressure. Closeness becomes danger. Intimacy becomes exposure. And their nervous system is wired not for connection, but escape. Every time you moved closer, they felt their grip slipping. And not because you were too much, but because you touched the parts of them they've spent their entire lives trying to bury. This isn't about arrogance. It's about fear. Deep, primal fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being seen and then abandoned. Fear that if someone really gets close, they'll find the damage and run. So avoidants beat you to the punch. They disappear first. They shut down emotionally because being vulnerable feels like death. You think they're cool and collected, but they're numb. You think they're calculating, but they're frozen. That detachment, that isn't peace. That's a trauma response. That's a wounded child inside an adult body doing everything they can to not feel pain again. People like this didn't learn to run from love out of nowhere. This isn't just a personality quirk. This is conditioning. Somewhere along the way, usually in childhood, they were taught that emotions weren't safe, that love came with conditions, that connection required performance, perfection, or silence. So they learned not to depend on anyone. They built walls so high that no one could climb them, not even them. They created a life where independence was mistaken for strength, but what they're really doing is surviving. That's it. Surviving emotional chaos by never letting anyone get close enough to trigger it again. You see, when you're with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, you're not just dating a person. You're confronting their entire history. You're dealing with years of unspoken grief. Moments where they reached for comfort and were met with rejection, indifference, or punishment. That doesn't just disappear. It festers. And when someone like you comes along, someone warm, available, open, emotionally honest, you don't feel safe to them. You feel foreign. You feel risky because you're offering something they don't trust. Real love. So they pull away, not to hurt you, but to protect themselves. And when they pull away, they hope you won't notice. They hope they can outrun the guilt. But the truth is, they notice everything. Every time you lean in, every time you text, every time you pause, hoping they'll say something real, they feel it. They're just too scared to hold it. And that's the hell of it, because deep down, they want the connection just as much as you do. They dream about love. They crave it. They fantasize about being held, being chosen, being seen. But when the opportunity actually shows up, their instincts scream run. That contradiction will destroy them internally. And unless they do the deep work to unpack their wiring, they'll keep cycling through relationships, hurting people they love and hating themselves for it afterward. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they feel too much all at once and don't know what to do with it. They're the ones who push you away and then check your profile late at night. The ones who ignore your message and then replay your voice note for the 5th time in a row. The ones who say, I need space, but sit there hoping you'll fight for them anyway. It's all backwards. It's all tangled. Because their heart is not the enemy. Their heart wants to come out. But their mind has been trained to kill that instinct before it costs them everything. So they live in conflict, tormented by the need to be close and the urge to protect themselves from that very closeness. You might be thinking, then why don't they just say it? Why don't they just tell me they're scared? Because vulnerability has never felt safe. Imagine growing up in an emotional minefield where showing your true self meant punishment or abandonment. You'd learn to shut up and shut down too. They've built their whole identity on not needing anyone. And when you come along and make them need you, they panic. Because now, if you leave, it's not just painful, it feels like they'll lose everything. That's too much pressure for someone who's still emotionally bleeding. So no, they're not running B-Cup. They don't care. They're running because they care so deeply, so destructively, that loving you the way you deserve would require them to confront their deepest fears. And not everyone is ready for that. Some people would rather lose the love of their life than lose control. That's the tragedy. That's the heartbreak they never talk about. The people who pretend they're fine are often the ones breaking the hardest when the door closes. The ones who didn't text back are sitting in their cars screaming at the steering wheel because they don't know why they keep doing this. And maybe, just maybe, that person is you. Maybe you're the avoidant. And maybe for the first time, you're realizing you didn't run because you're heartless. You ran because you're scared. And I get that. But listen closely. Fear doesn't get to make your choices anymore. Not if you want love. Not if you want real connection. You don't get to keep punishing the people who show up for you just because someone else failed you first. You've got to make a choice. Keep running or start healing. Because you can't have love and protect your ego at the same time. It's one or the other. And if you keep choosing protection, you will end up alone. Love doesn't destroy you. Unhealed trauma does. Love is the thing that can save you if you let it. But you have to stop equating vulnerability with weakness. You have to stop thinking every good thing is temporary. You have to stop writing people off before they get the chance to really love you. And you have to stop pretending you don't care when you know damn well you'd give anything to go back and hold that person one more time. Running doesn't make the feelings disappear. It just delays the heartbreak. It's time to face the truth. You didn't lose them because they were too much. You lost them because you didn't know how to hold what you always wanted. And now that you know, you don't get to run blindly anymore. You get to choose. Stay stuck in fear or fight for something real. When you leave, they don't chase, but inside they shatter. And that's the part no one sees, the part they'll never show, not even to their closest friends. The moment you walk away, it looks like they don't flinch. They stay silent. No call, no apology, no fight. You're sitting there crushed, wondering how someone could let you go so easily after everything. You check your phone obsessively, hoping, praying for that one message. Please come back. But it never comes. So you assume they never cared. You assume they're fine. But what you don't see, what they've trained their entire life to hide, is that the silence is not peace, it's torment. It's a cage they've locked themselves in where the cost of chasing love feels greater than the cost of losing it. They are breaking inside. And the craziest part is they'll never tell a soul. They'll keep going. That's what they do. They'll go to work, smile at their coworkers, post a picture on Instagram looking unbothered like the thriving. They'll tell people, I'm just focusing on myself. But the truth, they can't sleep. They're haunted by the way you looked at them the last time you saw them. They remember your voice, your scent, the way you always knew when something was wrong, even when they pretended it wasn't. They replay your conversations. They regret what they didn't say. They think of every chance they had to open up and didn't. Every moment they could have leaned in but pushed you away instead. That regret sits in their chest like a weight they can't lift. But instead of reaching out, they convince themselves it's too late. They let their pride choke the very thing their heart is screaming for. And the worst part is they think they're protecting themselves. They believe that if they chase, they'll lose even more control. That if they show you their pain, you'll see how vulnerable they really are. And vulnerability to them feels like danger. So they'd rather bleed in silence than risk exposing a wound. They wear a mask so well, they even convince themselves they don't need you. But when they're alone, when the lights go out and there's no one left to perform for, the truth hits like a tidal wave. That numbness they tried to fake, it turns into panic. That I'm fine turns into nights staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell is wrong with them. They want to text you. They want to pick up the phone and beg you to understand. But their shame is louder than their love. You see, avoidants don't deal with loss the way others do. Their pain is internalized, buried, suppressed, because that's what they've been doing their whole life. When you grow up learning that emotions aren't safe, you don't grieve like normal people. You self-destruct in private. You shut down. You freeze. And you tell yourself stories like, I don't need anyone, or they were better off without me, just to cope with the hole that was ripped open when they left. And that it doesn't close quickly. It festers. It grows. It becomes a shadow that follows them into every new relationship, every silent night, every moment they wonder if they'll ever be truly loved again. They'll never tell you they cried in the car after they watched your story. They'll never admit they saved your voice note just to hear it when they missed you. They'll pretend they've moved on, even when every new person feels like a lot. They'll sabotage the next connection before it gets too deep because they're still haunted by how bad they messed up with you. But instead of reaching out, they'll stay hidden. They'll wait for the pain to pass, not realizing that it doesn't. Not when the love was real. Not when you were the first person to ever see through their walls. They don't just miss you. They miss the version of the really is that could only access around you. And when that disappears, it's not just you they lose. It's themselves. And you sit there thinking you were the only one hurting. You think they didn't care because they didn't change. But what you don't know is they wanted to. They picked up the phone 100 times. They typed out the message and deleted it. They sat in the dark asking, how did I let that person walk away? Pride is poison. And when your identity is built on self-protection, making the first move feels like tearing your own armor off and standing naked in front of the world. So they say nothing and hope that time will numb the ache. But time doesn't heal a love you never faced. Time just hardens the walls and deepens the regret. They convince themselves you'll come back, that you'll miss them too, much, that you'll be the one to reach out. But when you don't, when days turn to weeks and your silence becomes permanent, the reality hits them like a brick. You're not coming back this time. And that's when the collapse happens. That's when the weight of everything they didn't say comes crashing down. That's when they realize silence doesn't save them. It sentences them to loneliness. That's when the breaking becomes unbearable. And they won't tell anyone. Because how do you explain that you ruined the best thing that ever happened to you because you were too scared to be seen? How do you confess that your own fear was louder than your love? They suffer quietly with their chest tight and their thoughts spinning. And by the time they're ready to speak, you've already moved on. And that realization, it doesn't just sting, it destroys because they know they had the real thing and they let it slip away. Not because it wasn't right, but because they weren't ready to receive what they spent years praying for. They look calm, but inside they're screaming. They look stable, but inside they're shattered glass. And the worst part, no one knows because they were never taught how to show it. They were taught how to survive, not how to chase something worth keeping. So when they lose it, they break, and they break alone. And if you're the one who left, you have to stop thinking you weren't enough. You were, but you were trying to pour into a cup with no bottom. You were trying to love someone who never learned how to receive it without fear. And that's not your failure. That's their journey. You gave them a glimpse of something sacred. Whether they heal and come back or disappear into their silence forever, your love mattered. And their silence doesn't erase that. It only reveals how deeply it affected them, more than they'll ever admit. Your love didn't break them. It exposed their deepest wounds. That's the raw, painful truth that nobody tells you when you love someone with an avoidant heart. You didn't come into their life and cause destruction. You came into their life and illuminated the destruction that was already there. You lit a match in the darkest corners of their soul, the corners they swore they'd never let anyone see. And in doing so, you triggered everything they've spent years trying to outrun. The silence, the coldness, the pulling away. That wasn't a reaction to you. That was a reaction to every hidden scar you accidentally touched. And when real love walks into a space filled with emotional debris, something is going to shake. Something is going to snap. And often, the one who's been wounded confuses the feeling of love with danger because their body doesn't know the difference between emotional intimacy and threat. They never expected someone like you. Someone patient, someone consistent, someone who didn't walk away the moment things got hard. But when you showed up and kept showing up, it felt foreign to them. They didn't know how to process it. They weren't ready. You made them feel things they had locked away for years. Hope, vulnerability, the terrifying possibility that maybe this time someone would stay. And that possibility, that's what rattled them. That's what made their instincts scream. Because when you've built your entire emotional life around not needing, suddenly needing someone feels like suffocation. And so they panicked. They withdrew, they shut down and told themselves they were just not ready or not good enough or better off alone. But deep down, they knew the truth. You saw them. You touched a part of them they didn't even know was still alive. And that kind of exposure doesn't just scare someone who's been protecting themselves for years. It terrifies them. What you need to understand is that love, real love, is not always gentle at first. Sometimes it feels like confrontation, because when you bring love to someone who has never truly felt safe in love, it doesn't feel nurturing. It feels threatening. It challenges their beliefs. It cracks open their defense systems. And that is exactly what your presence exactly did. You didn't hurt them by lying or cheating or breaking their trust. You hurt them simply by being real, by being consistent, by being kind when they expected punishment, by staying when they expected abandonment. You broke the rules of the emotional game they were taught to play, and now they didn't know how to win or even survive. They've been walking through life carrying emotional landmines, and your love just happened to step on one. It's not your fault. That's not something you could have avoided. But when it detonated, everything they buried, all the rejection, all the unworthiness, all the grief came rushing to the surface. And instead of letting it out and healing, they blamed the explosion on you. They told themselves, this is what happens when I get close. This is why I don't open up. But the explosion didn't happen because of you. It happened because they never cleaned up the wreckage inside. And all you did, all your love did, was turn on the light. You reminded them of what they've been avoiding. That real intimacy means being seen in your mess, not just your mask. And that's what terrified them the most, because they've only ever felt valuable when they were composed, controlled, distant. And then you came in and said, I love you even when you're breaking. And that broke them more, because no one had ever said that to them before. No one had ever meant it. And they didn't believe it could be true. So instead of receiving it, they rejected it. Not because they didn't want it, but because they didn't think they deserved it. So when it all fell apart, when they pushed you away or disappeared or stood there unless while your heart cracked in front of them. You thought you were the reason. You thought maybe you were too intense, too emotional, too invested. But that's not it. What you were was healing. You were a mirror to their pain, a reflection of everything they wanted but didn't know how to hold. You weren't too much. You were exactly enough. And that's what made them run, because enough is terrifying to someone who's only known love as conditional. You didn't break them. You exposed the cracks that were already there. You poured light into their darkness, and when the light hit, it burned. It hurt. Because when you live in shadows long enough, even kindness feels like an attack. They didn't know how to accept your love, because love to them has always come with expectations, demands, betrayal. And here you were, offer, NG it freely. No strings, no performance, just presence. That kind of love requires courage. And they weren't ready. They thought they wanted it. They told themselves they were open. But the moment it got real, their fears got louder than their faith. And they chose the familiar pain of distance over the vulnerable risk of closeness. If they ever made you feel like you were the problem, understand this. You were the awakening, the shift, the mirror that made them feel something they didn't have language for. And when people don't know how to handle emotional truth, they reject the source. You reminded them that they still had wounds. You reminded them that they weren't as healed as they told themselves. You reminded them that love is still possible. And that's terrifying to someone who built their identity around never meeting it. You were a storm in their carefully curated stillness, and they weren't prepared to be moved. But don't confuse their reaction with your worth. Don't twist their resistance into proof that you were unlovable. You weren't rejected. Their walls were. And those walls were built long before you arrived. You just happened to be the one strong enough to knock on the door and say, let me in. And when they couldn't open it, it wasn't because they didn't want to. It was because they didn't know how. They still don't. And maybe they will someday. Maybe your love will echo in them long after you're gone. Maybe it already does. But whether they come back or disappear forever, know this. You didn't fail them. You showed them what was possible. You gave them a glimpse of what healing could feel like. And while they may have turned away, that doesn't erase the impact. They'll remember you long after the silence, long after the pretending. They'll remember how you made them feel, how you saw through them, how you stayed when they expected you to leave. And maybe, just maybe one day, they'll be brave enough to love someone the way you love them, not because you broke them, but because you helped them see where they still needed to be whole. If you're the avoidant, don't wait until they're gone to wake up. It's time to confront the fear. Heal what's hidden, because pushing away what you need the most will keep you lonely forever. We all know it. We've seen it play out. The people who could love but refuse to. The ones who could have everything they ever wanted but can't seem to let go of the walls they've spent years building. It's the paradox of the avoidant. They crave connection, yet run from it when it shows up. They want the closeness, the warmth, the intimacy that others seem to be able to give and receive so freely, yet the very moment it feels real, they retreat. And it's not because they don't want it, because they don't know how to handle it. And that, my friend, is the tragedy, because deep down you know the truth. The thing you fear the most is the very thing you need the most. For so long, you've told yourself that pushing people away is easier. That distancing yourself protects you from the hurt, the rejection, the betrayal. But in the process, you've isolated yourself. You've built an empire of solitude. You've convinced yourself that being alone is better than risking the vulnerability of being seen, of being truly loved. And what's happened in all of this? You've robbed yourself of the one thing that could heal the hurt, the one thing that can make you feel whole. You've kept your heart locked up so tight, kept your emotions buried so deep, that you don't even know who you are without the walls. And the longer you keep it up, the more impossible it becomes to break free. It's a cycle, a trap. And the only way out is to face it. But here's the kicker. You can't face it until you admit that it's there. You can't heal if you don't first acknowledge the pain. It's time to look at yourself in the mirror and ask, why do you run? Why do you push away the people who love you? Is it because you don't want them? Or is it because you're terrified of needing them? The truth is, it's not about the other person. It's about you. It's about your fears, your insecurities, your unhealed wounds. It's about the things you've buried so deep that even you are scared to face them. The fear that if you let someone in, they'll see all the broken pieces. The fear that they'll leave once they realize you're not perfect. The fear that you'll be abandoned again, just like you were before. These fears are so deeply ingrained in you that they've become your reality. You convinced yourself that being emotionally unavailable is a shield, when in fact, it's just a prison. But here's the thing. That prison, it's not a safe place. It's a cage. And you're the one who built it. You're the one who continues to lock yourself inside, convincing yourself that you're protecting yourself from pain. But the real pain is being locked away from connection. The real hurt comes from the isolation, the loneliness, the constant cycle of self-sabotage. You're not protecting yourself from the world, you're cutting yourself off from it. And in doing so, you're preventing the love and support that could heal you. You're running from the very thing that could help you grow, that could make you whole. And here's the hardest part. You don't even realize you're doing it. You don't realize that your avoidance is just another defense mechanism, a way to keep the world at arm's length so you don't have to feel the pain of vulnerability. But what happens when you continue to run? What happens when you push everyone away? You end up alone. You end up trapped in your own head with your own insecurities, with nothing but your own fears to keep you company. And the longer you stay there, the harder it is to break free. The more you convince yourself that you don't need anyone, the more you lose sight of the truth. You do need people. You need love. You need connection. And it's time to stop pretending that you don't. The moment you realize this is the moment you start healing. It's the moment you break free from the cycle of avoidance and start opening up to the world. It's the moment you choose to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop pretending you're fine when you're not. And I know it's hard. I know it feels terrifying to admit that you need someone, that you need anyone. But the truth is, everyone needs someone. No one is meant to do life alone. Not truly. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can stop fighting yourself and start opening up to what's possible. But this journey, this path toward healing requires one thing, bravery. It requires you to be brave enough to admit that you've been running for too long. It requires you to face the parts of yourself that you've been too afraid to see. It requires you to take off the armor, to let yourself feel the pain that you've been avoiding for so long. Because only through feeling that pain can you begin to heal it. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, it will be scary. But on the other side of that discomfort lies the freedom you've been searching for. On the other side of that fear lies the connection, the love, the intimacy that you've been denying yourself for far too long. It's time to stop waiting until they're gone. It's time to stop waiting for the people you care about to walk away before you wake up. You don't have to lose them to realize what you had. You don't have to wait for the regret to sink in before you decide to do something about it. You have the power to change. You have the power to break free from your own fear. But you have to take that first step. You have to open yourself up to the possibility that you are worthy of love, that you are worthy of connection, and that you don't have to keep running anymore. The people who love you want you to succeed. They want to see you heal, but they can't do that for you. They can't force you to open up. That's something only you can do. And the moment you choose to step into vulnerability, the moment you choose to be real with yourself and with others, everything changes. It won't happen overnight. It's not a magic fix, but it's the beginning of something beautiful. It's the beginning of the life you were always meant to live. And that life, it's worth the fear. It's worth the risk. It's worth the pain, because when you finally choose to heal, you'll realize that the love you've been running from is the love that could save you. And when you embrace it, you'll never have to run again.